El Camino is written and directed by Vince Gilligan, and this movie once again follows Jesse Pinkman, who, after escaping Jack and his gang, he must go on the run from the police and tries to escape his dark, looming past. In January of 2008, we were introduced to the world of Breaking Bad, and ever since then, the show had grown into a worldwide phenomenon and has since become one of, if not the greatest television show to ever grace the small screen. And lucky for us, its creator Vince Gilligan seems to share our obsession with the world of Breaking Bad, having launched spin-offs of some of the most compelling characters from that show, with the very successful, critically acclaimed Better Call Saul and now El Camino. Being such a tremendous fan of this show, I, like a lot of you watching this, probably had a bit of trepidation when this project was announced. Jesse Pinkman has and will always be my favorite character throughout the show, and the way that his journey ends is one of the most emotionally impactful things to happen throughout the entire series. But the good news is, you know who also loves the character of Jesse Pinkman, and you know who also doesn't want to ruin the legacy that that character has built up? Vince Gilligan. And the fact that he helped create 62 of the greatest episodes of television ever made, 5 of which he actually directed himself, I think I'm relinquishing some of the trepidation that I had going into this film and putting my faith in his hands. And I think on the whole, that does pay off with El Camino. This film puts the audience immediately back into the world of Breaking Bad in a way that felt surprisingly cohesive. One of the keys to this film being as successful as it is due largely in part to Aaron Paul, who reprises his role as Jesse Pinkman, and once again he is fantastic. His performance in this film is different than what we see from him throughout the entire show. Jesse isn't the same person that we once knew after being left and tortured in a cage for over 6 months. And this film examines the results of that. Jesse is unhinged. He's physically and emotionally scarred. He can't even sleep or shower without having attacks as a result of his trauma. And I think for myself, El Camino was exactly what I was expecting, narratively speaking, because this film takes place minutes after where the show left off, where we have Jesse escaping Jack's gang. And El Camino is a fantastic example of cause and effect storytelling. Every action that our protagonist takes in this film has a consequence, and the movie is about him reacting and adapting to those consequences. And though this film may not be filled with the action or the kind of inherent suspense that was season 5 of Breaking Bad, I did find this movie to be pretty riveting nonetheless. However, where I could see some fans being a little tripped up, myself included to a degree, is I don't really think that El Camino is an incredibly necessary film, because there's not a ton that happens in this film, big picture wise, that fans probably couldn't already assume based on where our characters are at emotionally. I would consider this a very minor problem. It didn't bother me that much, but I do think that there are some fans of this show that will watch this movie and it will bother them. And I think the reason that it doesn't really bother me that much is because this is a straight to Netflix film. Yes, it is being shown in limited theaters across America, but the budget of this film isn't incredibly high. I assume it is higher than some of the episodes within the show, but this movie isn't costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Instead, it was an idea that Vince Gilligan had, and he had approached Aaron Paul, and they made something out of it. And the overall outcome of this movie doesn't in any way affect my feelings of the television show. Even if it was terrible, that show is still there. I can still watch it whenever I want. And I think this film actually reminds me in a lot of ways to kind of be similar to an epilogue of sorts to Breaking Bad. This film does not work at all on its own, and if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, you're probably going to be pretty lost, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. This is made for the fans of that show. And in a lot of ways, this movie just feels like a natural continuation of where the show left off. Like I said, this movie is pretty much exactly what I expected. And El Camino just actually felt like a really good 2-hour long episode of Breaking Bad. However, there are some elements of this film that I think if they were actually part of Breaking Bad and weren't made 6 years later, I do not think that they would be included in the show. For example, this film features a number of flashbacks that Jesse has that introduce prior characters from the show. In some cases, yes, it is totally and completely necessary because these flashbacks inform events that happen directly in this film. Whereas with other cases, it more often felt like Vince Gilligan was being like, you know who this is. That's right. You like Breaking Bad. And in a lot of ways, this did feel sort of jarring, and it kind of did take me out of the movie in places. Because it's been 6 years since Breaking Bad aired its series finale, and guess what? People have aged since then. I know that there's not a ton that the filmmakers could do when they encounter this problem. I mean, I'm not telling the actors to quit aging for 6 years. However, I will say that Vince Gilligan and company probably could have displayed a bit more hesitation when thinking about what characters to include in this movie. With all that being said though, I would say that I was very pleased with El Camino. I think it takes the characters in natural direction, and the performances that portray them do not skip a beat. And although this film doesn't necessarily give more information that I could have already assumed, I think fans of Breaking Bad will be pleased to see one of the best characters in the show make a return. I would say if you don't want the show to end with a nice, neat bow, I would probably steer away from this movie, but if you do want to see more of these characters and you are a huge fan of Breaking Bad and you can't get enough of it, I would absolutely recommend that you check out El Camino. So did you guys see El Camino? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, you can click on the link down below and subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. And guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.